Hello and welcome to After Equality. My name is Christy, and today I'm talking to Nadège, who is a LMFT, which is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and we're going to talk about cultural competence and cultural humility within the mental health space. She is an amazing woman of color. She is so just educated, and and I love like her realness that she brings to the therapy world, and just I love like her approach to therapy and making it accessible for all people of color and with all cultures in mind. So it's gonna be a great conversation. I can't wait to get into it. Let's go. Wow. There we go. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm as well as can be, like all things considered. But we're getting through it. I've been talking a lot, checking in a lot with my other Asian friends, like venting a lot, which has been really good. But I think that also like that I think that it makes it great that I'm talking to you today. Like not like because I want you to give me free therapy or anything, but just like just this idea of like talking about, cross culture, being mindful of each other, like things like that, especially when it comes to mental health and especially like in times like this.
For
When I
sure.
think like as much as
Totally.
checking in is important, I think there's also a lot more to consider in this space than just like, hey, how are you?
Okay, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. But one of the things we talked about before when we had our earlier conversation is how you make therapy approachable, especially for BIPOC people, so Black, Indigenous, other people of color, and things like that. So how did you go about building your practice around that, and what are the biggest hurdles you face?
Well, I think I think the biggest hurdle was the way that we are educated in the therapy world is to be culturally competent. And that is really, it's not good guidance because being culturally competent will fill you chock full of hubris.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think my biggest hurdle was understanding that that is a recipe for disaster. I think that the most important thing is to be culturally humble. So having a fair amount of cultural humility, which is understanding that you don't know shit and being comfortable with that you don't know shit and being able to be present in the room with somebody from a different culture than you and being completely comfortable knowing that you don't know shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way that I show up with POCs and BIPOC folks is knowing that I don't know shit.
Yeah.
uh, and being okay with that. And I think the way that I do therapy lends to that because I don't do power dynamics. Like I don't show up in a room like I know everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm already coming from a space like I don't know everything. So understanding that our cultures are different and that I am showing up in a space to being open to understanding and acknowledging that I don't know. Um, and so having the space to not pathologize everything that somebody else is doing from this very like white male perspective, because that's how we're taught. We're taught from a white male perspective.
Yeah.
And if you're taught from a white male perspective, which if you go to school in the US to be a therapist, you are taught from a white male perspective, you are going to pathologize everything that is not white male, right?
Right.
And so family dynamics, what we see as unhealthy boundaries or unhealthy relationships are all, we're going to pathologize every other culture. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was undoing that and understanding that I had to undo that. Um, and then not putting my shit, my my own preconceived notions, my own identity and my own culture, right? Because it also goes for the same, like, we think of folks of color, but also if I have a white lady in my office, I also have to be mindful that that's a white lady,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not going to put, my preconceived notions of this white lady and her family dynamics and being able to remove my shit when I show up for her also.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was the biggest hurdle was undoing my shit and undoing my schooling to a certain extent to be able to show up in a really humble way.
I love that. So, are there still things you find difficult to work through in order to maintain this like cultural humility, this cultural competence in your practice? Because like you are, I mean, we talked about this like where you know you're a woman of color, obviously, and that's not something that is as prevalent in the therapy world, I feel like.
Mhm.
And so like I feel like there's possible pushback from just like, you know, having this like from having this idea that you're a person of color and having the stigma on you already, but then like also like yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting question because like I want to answer it honestly, right?
Do
Um
it. Like I love honesty.
also that part of me that's like, I'm a professional and I'm a blank slate and I'm good at my job. And it's like, yeah, sure, my fucking anger. I'm a woman of color. And so like I have my like stuff that shows up. And when I have another person of color that shows up and isn't in the place that I'm at, right? And I want them to smack the shit out of their boss
Mhm.
or just stop talking to their shitty mom.
Mhm.
Um, or I'm just like, oh, you could do so much better. Oh, you're so strong, but they're not in that place.
Mhm.
Um, Specifically when I'm working with people of color, my stuff shows up and I want to be better at not taking that with me. I'm good
Mhm.
at not letting it show up in the room. I'm not good at not letting it sit with me when I leave. It weighs heavily on me. Um, what's happening socially weighs heavy on me.
Mhm.
That desire to like, because right now we're obviously doing a lot of Zoom session, jump through the screen and hug my client because I'm like, fuck, dude, society sucks.
Yeah.
But I kind of have to be like the strong person in the room. But I just want to cry, and sometimes I want my client to give me a hug. Right? Like sis, I can relate. Like and like having to be the strong person sometimes is hard. Not being angry for
Mhm.
my client and showing it is hard.
Mhm.
Understanding the cultural dynamic of like, no, you can't just cut your family off. I know we love, Instagram loves to tell us, cut toxic people out of our lives, but some of our cultures just don't fucking allow us to do that.
Yeah.
We can't do that. And
Right.
me wanting to be like, just do it, but knowing that you can't, right? And so, like, I think for me, it's like the place that I still struggle with is my transference and countertransference and managing that specifically as a woman of color and the societal uh, engagement that happens with what's going on
Yeah.
in addition to like that interpersonal engagement.
Well, and I think this goes back to, I mean, you're human. So this goes back to the whole idea of like what you were saying about how like you're like the education that goes into being a therapist is very much from like a white male perspective. And I feel like without this like this knowledge of like culture and these things like that, like it's easy to detach yourself and to just say like, oh no, it's easy, just like just write them off, just don't talk to them, just do this. Is like, but you know, like you said, like as a person of color, like it's there are just things we don't do.
Hmm. Straight up, there's just shit we don't do.
And I think it's like, I mean, like this kind of goes into my next question because I wanted to talk more about just like the education process and how it differs from kind of like your professional world now, like being, you know, being a woman of color in this field that is very, you know, white prevalent, very like dominated by like a white perspective. Um, and so just this idea that like, um, where was I going with this? But just this idea that like, you know, like obviously your clients, I think like, and that also goes to why your therapy or like your form of therapy, the way you do therapy is more accessible because like I think you have this understanding that obviously like you can't treat these people, you can't treat these like social issues, these things like a white male, like because they're like a white man, because again like there are things that white men are never going to experience, like they don't have to experience, they never will. And you know, with all the talk of white privilege and things now, like I think it is coming so clear like to the surface what these differences are,
Yeah.
and just how like the
And
idea of like needing to humanize everything.
yeah. And I think it's so interesting because I have a lot of white male clients and they don't benefit from a white male perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's like nobody benefits from a white male perspective, and our education is so heavy from a white male perspective, right? And
Mm-hmm.
um, the thing that was the most interesting to me is that my clients, my white male clients, the thing that they were running away from their past therapists was that they were looking for they most of my clients were specifically looking for a woman of color
Mm-hmm.
because they wanted something different and they were hoping for something different. And most of my clients, because my consultation process, I am very, very, very clear that I do not adhere to Western standards as far as the way in which I present therapy. Um, I adhere to our rules and regulations, but like I'm gonna eat. I might show up in a bonnet, sweatpants, and I'm not even gonna be here just eating an orange. I might eat fufu with my hands.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna cuss. I'm gonna crack jokes, and a lot of people are looking for that because I'm not gonna adhere to Western styles of professionalism
Mm-hmm.
because to me, no offense, they're fucking garbage, and they prevent to me from being authentic. And if I'm not authentic, why would you be?
Right.
Right? And like, who even created them? We know, but
Right. So what would you say like your experience working with BIPOC clients? How does it like how are there specific ways that it differs from what you were taught in school?
um, well, I think there's this idea of like the blank slate
Mm-hmm.
that therapy in general is moving away from, right? And BIPOC and POC clients, we don't do well with that. We don't do well with just a blank slate. And the blank slate is the idea that your therapist is just this blank, doesn't hold anything. They're just this blank thing that sits there and hears you that you like kind of engage with. And we don't do well with that. We need emotion. We need engagement. We need interaction. We need I come from a perspective of like we all have an indigenous culture
Mm-hmm.
wherever it is that our culture, our ancestors, or our people originate from. We have roles that we play and that we unconsciously adhere to. And I'm not talking about like gender roles. I'm talking about like, do I need to be the mother or the friend or the wise one or the teacher, or do I need to be the child, or or the daughter? Or the son? What do I need, right? And so what I found is that when I work with BIPOC or POCs, very quickly I can recognize what role they are starving for. And usually I can see that longing and that place is not being filled. So
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is that if I have someone coming in who is they just need to teach. They're an older woman, maybe their kids all left, and they want to teach, right? They want to impart wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
right? I will very quickly fall into the role of I want to learn, I want to be the student. And therapy is conducted in a way where now they're teaching me something. And in that, I'm able to give them tools for what it is that they need. But I
Mm-hmm.
find that that is the way that healing works the best for us because now these are my beliefs, right? We unconsciously go back to our indigenous selves because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of our culture that we pass down has roots in that. And so
Yeah.
we very easily slip back into that, and our brains are very organized and oriented in that way. So our healing is very oriented in that way. And so the way that I work is that is the place where I slide in. And that is very different than the way that I was taught.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking like in my own experience because I'm Asian, and I was talking about this with my best friend, and she's also Asian. Like I feel like with our culture, like the first step is giving ourselves permission to just express emotion in general.
Mhm.
Because like I think Asian culture is very like, nose to the grindstone, like, we get things done and then we move on. and we don't really like give ourselves the space to dwell on things.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in times like right now, it's like I feel like, I mean, I definitely like, you know, because I've grown up in a very Western society and very Westernized, and so like I feel like I'm going through those motions, but I'm seeing like a lot of, you know, my other Asian friends who like they don't know what to do, like they're feeling lost because they've never given themselves the permission to sit in that space.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think it's what, and the thing is like, for example, like in this time with everything going on, for example, if I had an elderly Asian woman come into my offices for services, the last goddamn thing I'm going to do is tell this woman what to do.
Right.
What I am going to do is fully humble myself and speak to her like she's my mother, or speak to her like she's my grandmother. And I'm going to find ways to slide tools and slide information in there as if I'm her daughter or her child, but very much adhere to deference, right? And that is cultural humility and cultural competence, because I am aware that that is a culture that adheres to deference. And the misstep would be cultural in our education would be like, when this elderly person comes in, you tell them how to manage their whatever. That's not going to fucking work. Right. And it's very similar to, like, for example, my mother's from the Ivory Coast, she's West African. If an elderly African woman comes in, I'm not gonna be like, okay, this is what you need to do. I'm gonna be like, hi, auntie. How are you? Did you eat? Do you need anything? Let me make you some tea. You know what? You look tired. Do you want some lotion for your hands? Let me put some lotion on your hands. Did you take care of yourself today? Here are some things. Even though they're paying me as their therapist, they're not going to be able to hear me if I'm like, you need to do these things. You need to make an appointment with a doctor. You need a checkup. I am going to fall into the role because first of all, thank you very much. I look young, but I'm also very young in comparison. And cultural competency and cultural humility, to me, understand the role and how to better help your client to slide in a way where the person that you're working with can hear you. Right.
So I have a question. All this like cultural competency and cultural humility, like, is that stuff you learned in school, or is that stuff you've learned while working?
So cultural competency and cultural humility are terms that we talk about in school. Now, the efficacy in which we learn about it is garbage, in my opinion.
Okay.
Now, they stress cultural competency in school. They do, workshops at work, but they don't do enough around humility. And what happens is that because they stress cultural competency, people think they're culturally competent. So it's like they read 2 articles on how to work with Asian folks. They read 2 articles how to work with Indigenous folks. They read 2 articles how to work with Black folks. And they're like, I know how to do this. And then they traumatize people.
Right.
Right. And that's anybody. I'm talking about anybody. I've fucked up before. We've all have. And that's why teaching cultural humility, in my opinion, is so important, because that's how I learned that I was not humble, because I thought I read 3 books and I knew what I was doing. I didn't. And I was lucky enough that the person that I fucked up with cussed me out. Well, she cussed me out so bad. Still my client. Cussed me out. One of my first clients. And she was like, bitch, you don't know what's going on right now. And I was like, oh my. And it was a great moment. It was a great moment for us. But I really thought I was like doing the thing. I'm a Black woman. I know. She cussed me out. And I was like, oh yeah. Oh, I'm a garbage can. Okay. And I collected myself and became much more humble. And I've screwed up in many other ways, but I let people know, if I fuck up, you tell me, because it's the only way that I learn. And I'm human. But that's where humility comes in, is I'm comfortable being corrected by my clients. Okay. But we're taught in Western schooling that we're the all-knowing and we shouldn't be corrected.
Right. So I mean, with all that said, what would you change? Like, if it was up to you to change things, how would you go about
with schooling?
Yeah, like improving the efficacy of that education.
I would say, one, I would be mandatory in the US. I would make it mandatory for just education on social justice, just social justice, American history, and not just American white history.
Mm-hmm.
We need to know Black history, Indigenous history, Asian American history, everybody, the history of immigration,
Mm-hmm.
everything. Because I think part of the biggest problem is people just have no idea what the fuck this country is. And I think that just a basic understanding of what actually America is will just allow people to shut up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just step back a little bit and be like, oh, there's a lot more going on here than I understand, right? Because we are very narrow minded and we only see like, like I just understand the Maryland because that's where I grew up. I moved
Mm-hmm.
to California. I was like, what in the hell is happening here? I don't even understand what I'm in. That just it was a culture shock to be in a different state.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think that, and then I would also say stressing cultural humility and expanding our understanding of mental health,
Mm-hmm.
and theorists and what mental health looks like in other places. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very like tiny, broad perspective of what health is. I think those would be the main things that I would change as far as like education.
Yeah. Okay. So, what are three things you want people to be aware of when it comes to
Mental
being
health.
like just like culturally mindful mental health, I guess.
Like for clinicians or for
Both. Either.
okay. I guess I'll do 3 for clinicians, 3 for clients.
All right, I love it.
Um, Clinicians, I guess number 1 would be shut the fuck up. Like shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Like listen. Not listen, but like listen. Like you have no idea what's going on. Just listen. Because we like to listen, but we don't like to listen. Just shut up. Just shut up, shut
Mm-hmm.
up, shut up, shut up. Just listen. Please. You will be surprised at how much you miss when you shut up. I know that sounds harsh, but I have to say it to myself all the time
Mm-hmm.
and just listen. Um, I guess number 2 would be you are not the expert. You think you are, you've been told you are, you're not. You have the training, you're not the expert. You are not the captain, you are the navigator. You're the navigator. You got the map, you can read the map. The captain, for some reason, can't read the map, but they are still the captain. You're the navigator. If you shut up, and you listen to the captain and you do your job and navigate, you guys will get to where you're supposed to go. No problems. Right. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's like, third is just like take notes and grow and learn. Because if you shut up and you don't think you're the captain, there are so many freaking places that you will go and so much that you will learn and you will grow exponentially that by the time you're on a new ship, you'll be like navigator extraordinaire. And it's just that simple. Like you will learn so much. If you have 30 clients in your practice, they're all from different cultures, and you shut up and just help these captains navigate, can you imagine how much you will learn, how much you will grow, and how much healing you will get and you will provide? So that's my for clinicians. For clients, do not be afraid to say no and to say fuck you to your therapist respectfully. Like, please, they don't know more than you about you. They don't know more than you about your culture.
Can
Oh,
you hear the crow behind me?
no, no,
Really? Oh,
no.
okay.
But I can hear my birds, so they're probably drowning your birds out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a crow that's like literally right above me. Like, oh my god, shut up.
It's probably yelling at me. Crows have a thing when it comes to me. Um, but yes, clients, do not be scared to say shut up and fuck you to your therapist. And I mean that respectfully. My language is a little bit, I'm a sailor. Well, my language is a sailor. I'm not a sailor. But they don't know more than you about you or about your culture. Do not feel any kind of way advocating for yourself and for your culture. Also, don't be afraid to ask the hard questions for your therapist. Not every therapist is a good fit for you. And you can go through as many therapists as you need till you find one that is. Also, don't be scared, last but not least, be scared to be specific. If you want a Black or a white or an Asian or a queer or a BIPOC or a biracial, half Filipino, half indigenous, whatever therapist, find them because it's your healing. Find who and what and how you need it. You find what you need. It's your healing journey. You get to be as specific or as non-specific as you want, and you get to be as you want. That's all.
I love it. I love it. Just really quick then, like just as like a tag on how, like just knowing what you know, and like and with all of this like stuff that is going on in the world, like how, like what are things that you would suggest people do to like check in, either like with themselves, with their friends, things like that.
I would say, don't run away from how you feel. How you feel is valid. Sit with yourself. You don't have to, as somebody who myself is an activist, you don't have to jump out there right now. Take some time for yourself. Ground yourself, take care of yourself. If it's drink tea, if it's watch shitty TV, if it's contain yourself first. Or surround yourself with people who make you laugh, with people who you feel safe with first. You know what I mean? If you don't want to talk to somebody right now, don't talk to them. If you don't want to answer to somebody right now, don't answer to them. It's about you feeling contained and feeling safe. I think that's the most important thing right now, is to just check in with yourself on how you feel and do what you need to do to be good and to be okay. And whatever that means, healthily and safely.
I love that.
Was there another? Was there another part to that question?
It was more just like, like to check in either with yourself or with your friends. Because I mean, especially now, like I know people are trying like a lot to check in with each other.
Yeah, I think checking in with each other is like, one, know your friend. Right? Like some of us want to be checked in with, some of us don't. Sometimes checking in isn't calling and being like, hey, how are you? Also, check your motive. Are you checking in with your friend because you're worried about your friend, or are you checking in with your friend because you want to feel better? Right? And then also, like, there's other ways to check in. Like, text your friend and be like, hey, I'm going to Postmate you some food. What do you want? Drive by and drop off a care package. Sometimes folks, especially right now, some people don't want to fucking talk, man. There's a lot to talk about and everybody wants to talk. Some people don't want to talk right now. They don't have anything to say, but they need support. So send somebody an edible arrangement. Amazon your friend their favorite cookies. Send them a Postmates gift card with a little note that's like, hey, witnessing you and loving you, sending you love and light. Send them a funny meme.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Like I think it's really helpful because like, I mean, like I know like a lot of people have been trying to check in on me, and it's hard to like this kind of like it's very similar to like when I was going through when my dad passed away. Like it gets overwhelming, like having to answer everybody. Yeah. When like sometimes I don't want to talk. I just kind of want to sit in it and figure out what it is I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Before I have to answer anybody.
Yeah. No, yeah. I feel that I was telling you that earlier this year, a lot of people were checking on me for obvious reasons. And one of the biggest things that I was saying is that I think is really important for people to investigate is, are you checking on me for me, or are you checking on me for you to feel better because you're feeling guilty?
Right.
Because don't make me do unnecessary emotional labor when I'm already taxed. Check yourself. Send me some Oreo cookies and leave me alone.
Those are always good.
Right. So
yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. This was
Yeah,
really great. I think like I did learn a lot, and I'm so glad we had this conversation, especially in light of all the turmoil in the world right now.
yeah, it was
Um,
totally a pleasure.
Thank you so much to Nadège for coming by. This is a really great conversation. I think it was so valuable, especially, with in light of everything that's happening right now, like her insight on how to check in with ourselves and with each other. I think it's just so valuable and so just needed. I really benefit from this conversation. I hope you did too. If you want to look up more, her Instagram will be attached to the captions and in the show notes, and I'll have her website and everything as well. So please look into that if you want to get in touch and learn more. And thank you so much for coming. I can't wait to sit with you again next week. Bye.